Dr. Han Tasik's hands trembled as he adjusted the observatory telescope's focus. The night had started like any other at the Bovian Mountain Observatory, with routine star mapping and data collection. Now, he couldn't tear his eyes away from what he was seeing. The alien vessel had simply appeared, materializing out of nowhere above Earth's atmosphere. Its surface shimmered like liquid mercury under the moonlight, geometric patterns rippling across its crystalline hull. The ship was massive. Tasik estimated it to be at least 3 kilometers long. "This can't be happening," he whispered, double-checking his measurements. But the readings didn't lie. The object was artificial, and it was definitely not from Earth. As head of South Korea's Extraterrestrial Research Division, Tasik had spent his career preparing for this moment. Yet now that it was here, he felt woefully unprepared. His fingers fumbled with his phone as he dialed the emergency contact number. Within an hour, the observatory was swarming with military personnel and government officials. Screens displayed news feeds from around the world. Similar ships had appeared over major cities across the globe. The world's governments were in chaos, and social media was exploding with panic and speculation. Park Jin, Tasik's assistant, burst into the main observation room. Her usually neat lab coat was disheveled, and her face was pale. "Sir, they're broadcasting," she announced, her voice shaking. "It's being picked up on all frequencies." The message came through clear as day, in perfect English. The voice was artificially smooth, lacking any emotion or inflection. "People of Earth, we are the Rin Collective. Your planet's resources have been deemed necessary for our continued expansion. Submit to our authority within 48 Earth hours or face elimination. Resistance is inadvisable." The room fell silent. Tasik watched as military officials exchanged worried glances. Within minutes, they were on their phones, coordinating with other nations. The next 24 hours were a blur of activity. The United Nations convened an emergency session. World leaders tried to establish diplomatic contact with the Rin, but received only automated responses repeating the original ultimatum. Military forces worldwide were placed on high alert. Some nations refused to wait for the deadline. China launched a barrage of anti-satellite missiles. Russia deployed its newest hypersonic weapons. The United States activated its space-based defense systems. Nothing worked. The missiles either detonated harmlessly against invisible shields or simply disappeared mid-flight. Tasik worked tirelessly, analyzing every piece of data they could gather about the alien vessels. Their technology was beyond anything humanity had ever conceived. The ships seemed to bend the laws of physics themselves. As the deadline approached, the world held its breath. Some people fled to bunkers. Others held impromptu end-of-the-world parties. Religious groups proclaimed it was Judgment Day. When the 48 hours expired, the Rin began their ground assault. They started with major cities, and Seoul was among their first targets. Smaller ships descended from the mothership, their crystalline surfaces reflecting the chaos below as they fired strange energy weapons that turned buildings to dust. The alien foot soldiers were equally terrifying. They stood nearly 3 meters tall, their bodies covered in what looked like living metal that shifted and moved with them. Traditional weapons barely scratched them. Bullets bounced off. Explosives were absorbed, and even direct tank hits only seemed to annoy them. Tasik found himself trapped in the observatory as the attack began. He watched through powerful telescopes as Seoul burned. The South Korean military fought bravely, but they might as well have been throwing stones at a battleship. Then something unexpected happened. Tasik was observing a group of Rin soldiers advancing through a residential area when they suddenly broke formation. Their movements became erratic, almost panicked. Through his telescope, he could see them swatting at the air around them. Zooming in closer, he noticed they had stumbled near a community garden. There, barely visible in his lens, was a simple wooden beehive. A swarm of angry bees was attacking the aliens, and to Tasik's amazement, the aliens were retreating. He quickly began recording, his heart racing. The Rin soldiers were clearly in distress. Their living metal armor seemed to offer no protection against the tiny insects. In fact, where the bees struck, the metal appeared to ripple and distort. "Park Jin," he called out, not taking his eyes off the scene. "Are you seeing this?" His assistant hurried over, her eyes widening as she watched the footage. "The bees," she whispered. "They're actually hurting them." Ta-Sik's mind was already racing with possibilities. If Earth's smallest creatures could penetrate the aliens' defenses, perhaps humanity had a chance after all. He needed to contact the military immediately, but first, he needed proof. Using the observatory's advanced cameras, he captured every second of the incident. The Rin soldiers eventually managed to retreat, but their movements remained uncoordinated and weak. Something about the bee stings had affected them deeply. As Ta-Sik prepared to send his findings to military command, he couldn't help but appreciate the irony. The mighty Rin Collective, with all their advanced technology and powerful weapons, might have just met their match in Earth's humble honeybee. Looking at the chaos around him, Ta-Sik felt the first glimmer of hope since the aliens had appeared. Sometimes, he realized, the smallest things could make the biggest difference. Now he just had to convince everyone else that their planet's best defense might be buzzing right in their backyards. Kim Do-young rubbed her tired eyes as she reviewed the footage for the 100th time. The research lab at the National Agricultural Research Institute had become her home over the past 3 days, since Dr. Han Ta-Sik had brought her the incredible video. 20 years of studying bees had taught her to notice the smallest details about their behavior, but nothing in her experience had prepared her for watching bees take down alien invaders. She played the sequence again, focusing on the moment when the first bee made contact with the Rin soldier. "There," she muttered, freezing the frame. "That's not just pain they're showing. That's systemic shock." The lab around her was a mess of papers, coffee cups, and hastily scribbled notes. Her team had been working around the clock, analyzing every frame of the footage and comparing it with their extensive knowledge of bee venom effects on various organisms. The door opened, and Ta-Sik walked in carrying fresh coffee. Dark circles under his eyes suggested he'd been sleeping as little as she had. "Any new insights?" he asked, placing a cup beside her. Do-young nodded excitedly. "Look at this reaction pattern," she said, pointing to the screen. "See how the alien's armor ripples after the sting. It's not just surface-level disruption. The venom is interfering with their entire biomechanical system." She pulled up another video, this one showing the normal bee sting's effect on human tissue. In humans, bee venom causes localized swelling and pain. But these aliens... She switched back to the first video. "Their entire nervous system seems to short-circuit." Ta-Sik leaned closer to the screen. Could it be an allergic reaction? Better, Do-young smiled. Their biomechanical armor appears to use some kind of neural network to function. Our tests suggest bee venom disrupts these pathways completely. It's like throwing water on a computer's circuit board. She stood up and walked to a whiteboard covered in chemical formulas and biological diagrams. Earth's insects evolved alongside our planet's life forms. These aliens, despite their advanced technology, have no natural defense against bee venom. Their armor, which can stop bullets and bombs, can't handle simple melittin, the main component in bee venom. Laboratory samples had confirmed her theory. They had managed to collect small pieces of damaged alien armor from the battlefield. When exposed to bee venom, the living metal became unstable, losing its protective properties. A single sting disorients them, Do-young explained, pulling up new test results. 5 stings can temporarily paralyze their armor systems. A full swarm attack. She paused for effect. "Well, you saw what happened in that garden." Ta-Sik was already on his phone, calling military command. But Do-young wasn't finished. She pulled out research papers from her desk. "We can make this even more effective," she said. "I've been working on selective breeding programs for years. We can enhance their venom production, increase their aggression toward specific targets, even modify their survival capabilities." She spread out diagrams showing bee genetics and behavior modifications. These aren't just random attacks. Bees are highly organized. They can be directed. With the right pheromone markers, we could actually guide them to target Rin soldiers specifically. The military representatives arrived within the hour. Du Young presented her findings, explaining how humanity's smallest defenders could become their greatest weapon. The generals were skeptical at first, but the evidence was undeniable. How quickly can you scale this up? One general asked. Du Young moved to another whiteboard, this one showing population growth charts. With emergency funding and cooperation from beekeepers worldwide, we could have significant numbers within months. But we need to start immediately. We need special breeding facilities, protected from the aliens' attacks. She pulled up a map showing potential facility locations. Underground complexes would be best. We need to protect the queen bees at all costs. Each queen can lay up to 2,000 eggs per day. With enough queens and proper care. The implications were clear. They could create an army of millions, no, billions, of tiny defenders. The Rin's impenetrable armor would become their greatest weakness, trapping them inside their own suits when the bees attacked. As the military officials discussed logistics, Du Young turned back to her microscope. The sample of alien armor under the lens was already showing promising reactions to various venom concentrations. She had spent her entire career studying these fascinating insects, and now they might hold the key to saving humanity. "We need more bees," she declared, looking up from her work. "Many more." Her voice was firm, carrying the weight of conviction. "And we need to start now." The generals nodded in agreement. Within hours, Operation Honeystrike was officially launched. Around the world, beekeepers were being contacted, equipment was being requisitioned, and underground facilities were being prepared. Du Young looked out the lab window at the night sky, where alien ships still loomed overhead. The Rin had come to Earth expecting to find primitive beings ready for conquest. Instead, they would face an enemy they never imagined. The combined might of Earth's most organized and defensive insects, guided by human intelligence and determination. She smiled as she turned back to her work. The future of humanity might just depend on the humble honeybee, and she was ready to lead the charge. Li Jiayun stood in the massive underground chamber, surrounded by the gentle humming of thousands of beehives. The facility, carved deep beneath the mountains of Gangwon Province, was one of dozens like it spread across Asia. What had once been an abandoned mining complex was now humanity's best hope for survival. "Status report," she called out to her team, checking the readings on her tablet. The numbers were promising. Each enhanced bee colony was producing offspring at 3 times the normal rate, and the new generation showed all the desired modifications. The bees in these facilities were special. Through careful selective breeding and some genetic tweaks, they were slightly larger than normal honeybees, with more potent venom sacs and enhanced resistance to environmental stressors. Most importantly, they responded to synthetic pheromones that could guide them toward specific targets. Jiayun walked between the rows of hives, checking the temperature and humidity controls. The air was thick with the smell of honey and wax. Workers in protective suits moved carefully among the colonies, monitoring their progress and collecting data. "Section 7 is ready for the next phase," her assistant reported, bringing over fresh data charts. "The new queens are laying eggs at peak efficiency." A screen on the wall showed similar operations happening across the continent. In Japan, underground facilities had been built into old subway tunnels. China had converted entire abandoned cities into bee production centers. Even North Korea had joined the effort, opening their military bunkers for the cause. Jiayun checked her watch. It was almost time for today's test. They had captured an alien scout ship 3 days ago, and now they would see if their enhanced bees could disable it completely. The test chamber was a massive concrete room, specially designed to contain both the ship and the swarm. Viewing windows made of thick, reinforced glass allowed observers to watch safely. Dr. Han Tasik was already there, along with military officials from several countries. "Are we ready?" Jiayun asked the control room team. They nodded, hands hovering over their controls. The alien scout ship sat in the center of the chamber, its crystalline surface still somehow menacing even in capture. They had managed to keep its systems partially active for the test, its shields humming with energy. "Releasing Test Swarm Alpha," announced the technician. A panel in the wall slid open, and a dark cloud of bees emerged. These were the newest generation, bred specifically for this purpose. Jai Yun held her breath as she watched the pheromone guidance system activate. Green lights on the control panel showed the chemical markers working perfectly. The swarm moved as one entity, directly toward the scout ship. "Shields at full power," someone reported. Everyone watched as the bees approached the energy barrier that had proven impenetrable to conventional weapons. The swarm hit the shield and passed right through. The tiny gaps in the energy field, too small for any human weapon, were more than large enough for the bees. They swarmed over the ship's surface, finding microscopic seams in the living metal. "Ship systems showing disruption," called out the monitoring technician. On their screens, they could see the alien vessel's power levels fluctuating wildly. "Neural network failing. Main systems going dark." Within minutes, the scout ship's lights flickered and died. Its shields collapsed, and the living metal of its hull became dull and unresponsive. The bees had done what missiles and bombs could not. "It seems almost poetic," Jai Yun told Tasik as they watched. They came expecting primitives, never considering that Earth's smallest creatures would be their undoing. The successful test sparked immediate action. Production quotas were doubled. New facilities were rushed into operation. Every beekeeper from Seoul to Singapore was recruited to help manage the expanding colonies. Jai Yun spent the next weeks coordinating it all. She worked with scientists to refine the pheromone guidance systems, with engineers to design better delivery methods, with military strategists to plan deployment. The bees themselves seemed to thrive in their new role. Each generation was stronger, more responsive to the guidance systems, more effective against alien technology. They had created something unprecedented, an organic weapon that could bypass the most advanced alien defenses. Late one night, as Jai Yun checked on the queen breeding program, she paused to watch the bees going about their work. They moved with purpose, each one playing its part in the colony's survival, just like humans were now doing, united against a common threat. A message came through on her tablet. The first large-scale deployment would begin tomorrow. Millions of enhanced bees would be released against Rin forces in coordinated attacks across Asia. Jai Yun typed out her final approval, then turned back to watch her tiny army prepare for war. In all their calculations and preparations, she wondered if the Rin had ever considered that Earth's defense would come not from its technology or military might, but from its natural world. Tomorrow, they would learn that lesson. The humble honeybee, enhanced by human ingenuity, but still essentially unchanged from its natural form, would show the aliens that they had severely underestimated Earth and its defenders. As she made her final rounds for the night, the constant humming of the hive sounded almost like a war drum, beating out humanity's response to those who would try to conquer them. The bees were ready. Tomorrow, the real fight would begin. Commander Yoon Min-ki watched through high-powered binoculars as the Rin forces advanced through the streets of Busan. Their metallic forms gleamed in the morning sun, moving with mechanical precision between the damaged buildings. The port city had been under siege for 3 days, and conventional forces had been pushed back to the northern districts. The aliens moved in their standard formation, heavily armored units in front, energy weapon specialists behind them, and their fearsome combat walkers bringing up the rear. They had used this same tactic to capture cities across the globe. But today would be different. Min-ki keyed his radio. All units confirm ready status. One by one, the hidden teams across the city reported in. Specialized containers had been placed strategically throughout Busan, disguised as debris or hidden in abandoned buildings. Each one held thousands of enhanced bees, waiting for the signal. Enemy force approaching marker point Alpha, reported his forward observer. 3 minutes to optimal range. Min-Ki watched as the alien advance continued. They were confident, showing no signs of concern about potential resistance. Their shields had proven impenetrable to everything humanity had thrown at them so far. 2 minutes. The commander thought about the weeks of preparation that had led to this moment. The underground breeding facilities, the modified pheromone delivery systems, the carefully planned placement of every container. One chance to prove that Earth could fight back. 1 minute. The Ren forces reached the designated zone. Their front line passed between 2 buildings where the first containers were hidden. Min-Ki took a deep breath and pressed the button on his command console. "Release the swarms," he ordered. "All sectors. Execute." Across the city, hundreds of containers opened simultaneously. The morning air filled with the sound of millions of wings as the enhanced bees emerge. The swarms formed dark clouds that rose above the buildings, guided by the synthetic pheromones toward their targets. At first, the Ren didn't react. Their sensors were calibrated to detect weapons and explosives, not insects. By the time they realized what was happening, it was too late. The first swarm descended on their front line. The bees passed through their energy shields as if they weren't there, finding every microscopic gap in their living metal armor. Within seconds, the alien formation began to break. "Sir," his radio crackled with excitement, "the swarms are penetrating their defenses." Min-Ki watched through his binoculars as chaos erupted among the alien ranks. Their coordinated advance collapsed into disorder. Warriors swatted uselessly at the air around them, their movements becoming increasingly erratic as the venom took effect. "They're retreating," Min-Ki announced over the command frequency. "The swarms are getting through their shields." A Ren combat walker stumbled, its pilot clearly struggling as bees found their way into its control chamber. The massive machine crashed into a building, its systems disrupted by the countless stings its operator was receiving. More swarms descended on the aliens' rear units. Their energy weapons, so devastating against human forces, proved useless against targets too small to hit. Some tried to activate their emergency teleporters, but the venom was already disrupting their neural interfaces. "All units, advance," Min-Ki ordered. Human forces emerged from their defensive positions, wearing specially designed suits that protected them from the bees. They moved forward, securing abandoned alien equipment and capturing incapacitated warriors. Reports began coming in from other cities: Seoul, Tokyo, Beijing. Everywhere the bees had been deployed, the Ren forces were in retreat. Their impenetrable defenses had become a prison, trapping them inside their armor as the venom shut down their systems. A particularly satisfying sight caught Min-Ki's attention. A group of Ren warriors had been cornered against a building, completely surrounded by swarms. Their once fearsome armor was now dulled and unresponsive, its neural network scrambled by thousands of stings. "Command, this is Forward Team 3, came another report. "Enemy forces are abandoning their heavy equipment. They're falling back to their landing zones." Min-Ki allowed himself a small smile. Humanity had found its weapon, turning the aliens' greatest strength into their greatest weakness. Their advanced technology, which had made them seem invincible, couldn't protect them from Earth's smallest defenders. As the day progressed, the victory became clear. The Ren forces retreated in disarray, leaving behind damaged equipment and incapacitated soldiers. The bees pursued them relentlessly, guided by their pheromone markers, giving the aliens no chance to regroup or counterattack. By sunset, Busan was largely clear of enemy forces. Similar reports came in from across Asia, Europe, and the Americas. The first major counterattack against the Ren had succeeded beyond their highest hopes. Min-Ki stood on a rooftop, watching the last rays of sun illuminate the scattered remnants of the alien army. Around him, these returned to their containers, their work done for now. Tomorrow would bring new battles, but today had proven something crucial. Earth was not defenseless. In the distance, the massive Ren mothership hung in the sky, its crystalline surface reflecting the sunset. Min-Ki knew they would adapt, try new tactics. But humanity had shown them something important. Sometimes the smallest creatures could bring down the mightiest enemies. As night fell over the liberated city, the commander began planning the next phase. The war wasn't over, but for the first time since the invasion began, humanity had hope. And it had come in the form of millions of tiny winged soldiers. Song Hejun paced nervously in the underground launch control center as technicians made final adjustments to his orbital delivery pods. The massive screens showed real-time footage of Rin ships positioning themselves for another bombardment run. They had already destroyed thousands of acres of farmland, targeting known bee populations with precise energy weapons. "They're desperate," he muttered, checking the launch calculations one more time. "They know they're vulnerable." The pods were his creation. Modified satellite deployment vehicles redesigned to carry very special cargo. Each hexagonal chamber within contained hundreds of specially adapted bees, the result of months of intense genetic modification and selective breeding. These bees could survive in near-vacuum conditions, their bodies enhanced to withstand the harsh environment of space. All pods showing green status, reported his lead technician. Environmental systems functioning at optimal levels. Hejun moved to the main control panel, where detailed readouts showed the status of each pod's precious cargo. The bees were in hibernation, waiting to be awakened upon deployment. Their enhanced bodies were further protected by micro-thin protective coatings that would allow them to survive the brief exposure to space. Enemy ships moving into position, called out the radar operator. They're charging weapons. Time was running out. The Rin had adapted their tactics after their ground forces were defeated, moving to orbital bombardment to try to eliminate Earth's new weapon. They had already destroyed several major breeding facilities that weren't properly hidden. "Begin launch sequence," Hejun ordered. "All pods prepare for deployment." The launch facility, hidden deep within a mountain, rumbled as massive doors opened in the peak above. The pods, gleaming like artificial honeycombs in the floodlights, were raised into position on their launch platforms. "First wave ready," announced the launch controller. "Targeting solutions locked." Hejun took a deep breath. Everything depended on his calculations being correct. The pods had to reach the perfect altitude and position before releasing their cargo, and the bees had to survive long enough to reach their targets. "Launch sequence initiated," he announced, pressing the command sequence. The first wave of pods lifted off, riding columns of flame into the night sky. On the screens, they could track their ascent toward the alien fleet. The Rin ships detected the launch immediately. Energy beams lanced down, trying to intercept the pods. But Hejun had anticipated this. The pods split apart mid-flight, each fragment continuing on its own trajectory, making them nearly impossible to target effectively. "Pods reaching deployment altitude," called out the flight controller. "Preparing for release." High above Earth, the pods opened like blooming flowers. The space-adapted bees, awakened by specific temperature and chemical signals, emerged into the vacuum. Their special coating protected them from the cold of space, while tiny propulsion sacs allowed them to maneuver in zero gravity. The Rin ship's shields, designed to stop missiles and energy weapons, couldn't prevent the microscopic insects from passing through. The bees, guided by advanced pheromone markers, headed straight for the nearest vessel's external sensor arrays and maintenance access points. "First contact confirmed," someone shouted. "They're getting through." On the monitors, they could see the first signs of disruption in the alien fleet. Ships began to move erratically as their neural networks were affected by the bee venom. Emergency lights flickered across their hulls. "Second wave, launch," Hejun ordered. More pods streaked upward, carrying thousands more space bees toward the increasingly chaotic alien fleet. The Rin attempted to retreat, but the bees were already inside their ships. Their living metal hulls, usually so effective at repelling attacks, became a trap. The bees found their way through ventilation systems and power conduits, reaching critical systems and crew areas. "Sir, we're detecting multiple power fluctuations in the enemy fleet," reported the sensor operator. "Their shields are failing." Hajun watched in amazement as his creation proved even more effective than he'd hoped. The mighty Rin ships, which had terrorized Earth for months, were being defeated by insects smaller than their smallest components. Some alien vessels attempted emergency jumps to escape, but their neural interfaces were too compromised to properly activate their drive systems. Others tried to maintain formation, only to collide with each other as their navigation systems failed. "Launch final wave," Hajum commanded. The last set of pods rose into the sky, their cargo ready to ensure total victory. From their underground bunker, they watched as humanity's smallest warriors turned the tide of the space battle. Ships that could shrug off nuclear weapons were being disabled by bee stings. The irony wasn't lost on anyone in the control room. Hours later, as the sun rose over the mountain facility, the results were clear. The Rin orbital fleet was in ruins, their mighty ships either disabled or retreating in disorder. Hajun's space bees had proven that nowhere was safe for the invaders. He stood at the launch facility's observation window, watching the last pods return with their surviving cargo. Above, through gaps in the clouds, he could see the damaged alien ships limping away from Earth orbit. "Sometimes," he said to no one in particular, "the best solutions are the simplest ones." He smiled, thinking about how the mighty Rin collective had been brought low by modified insects. The war wasn't over, but a crucial battle had been won. Humanity had taken the fight to space itself, proving that even there, Earth's defenders could prevail. And it had all started with a simple idea. If bees could fight on the ground, why not in space too? Choi Soo-min leaned forward in her chair at Mission Control, her eyes fixed on the massive display screen that showed the Rin flagship's status. The once mighty vessel, over 5 kilometers long, was now drifting helplessly as swarms of space-adapted bees infiltrated its systems. Around it, the remainder of the alien fleet was in chaos. Multiple ships reporting critical system failures called out the sensor operator. Their neural networks are shutting down across the board. Soo-min watched as another wave of bee pods reached their targets. The tiny insects, barely visible even on their highest resolution cameras, were proving more effective than all of Earth's military might combined. The Rin's supposedly impenetrable defenses were useless against this unprecedented threat. "Status update from Ground Team 6, someone announced. "They've secured 3 downed Rin vessels in the Pacific region. No survivors found. The crews teleported out before their systems failed completely." The past 12 hours had been intense. After the success of the orbital assault, Earth's military forces had launched a coordinated global attack. While space bees disabled the alien fleet from above, ground forces moved in to secure crashed ships and abandoned bases. A red light began flashing on Soo-min's console. "We're receiving a transmission from the flagship," she announced, adjusting her headset. The message came through in the same artificial voice they'd heard months ago during first contact, but now it lacked its former confidence. "Their translator is having trouble keeping up," she told her team as she worked to clean up the signal. "The bee venom is affecting their communication systems." Finally, the message became clear. The Rin Collective, which had boasted of conquering 12 other worlds, was surrendering to Earth. Their mighty empire, built on advanced technology and living metal, had been brought low by insects smaller than their fingertips. "We're receiving their surrender," Soo-min announced, her voice steadied despite her excitement. "They're requesting immediate withdrawal from Earth space." The control room erupted in cheers, but Soo-min remained focused. She began coordinating with military commands worldwide, ensuring the surrender was properly documented and verified. The Rin were offering to share their teleportation technology in exchange for safe passage away from Earth. "Get me a secure line to the Joint Chiefs," she ordered. "They'll want to hear this directly." As she waited for the connection, Soo-min reviewed the footage from the battle. The Rin's living metal ships, which had seemed so invincible just months ago, were now dead in space. Their neural networks, sophisticated enough to deflect nuclear weapons, had been completely overwhelmed by simple BVM. "Man," called one of her analysts, "we're detecting massive energy signatures. The remaining Rin ships are powering up their jump drives." "Let them go," she replied, "but keep the bee swarms on standby, just in case." The alien fleet, or what remained of it, began to disappear in flashes of light. They left behind dozens of disabled vessels, treasure troves of advanced technology that would take Earth's scientists years to study and understand. In the following hours, reports came in from around the world. Rin ground forces were abandoning their positions, teleporting to their few remaining functional ships. Storage facilities were found containing their advanced weapons and technology, left behind in their hurry to escape. "Final ship preparing to jump," announced the sensor operator. On the main screen, the Rin flagship, now restored to minimal functionality, was positioning itself for departure. Just before it vanished, a final message came through. "Your world is marked in our archives. None shall attempt conquest here again. The price is too high." Su Min allowed herself a small smile as the last alien ship disappeared from their sensors. Humanity had faced its greatest challenge and emerged victorious, thanks to an unlikely alliance with its smallest defenders. "Begin recovery operations," she ordered. "I want every piece of alien tech cataloged and secured. And get me a status report on our bee populations, both regular and space-adapted." As the control room settled into post-victory operations, Su Min thought about how this would be recorded in history. The day Earth's bees saved humanity from alien invasion. It sounded almost ridiculous, yet it was absolutely true. She looked at the small pot of honey on her desk, a gift from one of the beekeepers who had helped make this victory possible. Such a simple thing, yet it represented everything that had allowed Earth to prevail. Nature's perfect design combined with human ingenuity and determination. Reports continued to come in through the night. Cleanup operations were beginning worldwide. Scientists were already studying the abandoned alien technology, and in hidden facilities across the globe, billions of bees, Earth's newest line of defense, continued their ancient work of making honey and protecting their homes. The war was over. Humanity had survived its first contact with an alien civilization, and in doing so, had discovered that sometimes the best weapons aren't weapons at all. Sometimes they're tiny insects that had been living alongside us all along, just waiting for their moment to prove their worth. Su Min began preparing her final report on the victory. Future generations would need to know exactly how Earth had won its first interstellar war, not with bombs or guns, but with bees. It was, she thought, a lesson that would serve humanity well in the years to come. Dr. Han Ta-Sik adjusted his formal diplomatic robes as he sat at the grand oak table in the Interstellar Relations Center. The building, constructed from a mixture of Earth materials and recovered alien technology, stood as a symbol of humanity's emergence onto the galactic stage. Through the vast windows, he could see the carefully maintained gardens where thousands of bees went about their daily work. 5 years had passed since the Rin Collective's defeat, and Earth had changed dramatically. The knowledge gained from captured alien technology had advanced human civilization by centuries. Yet among all the gleaming new buildings and advanced devices, bees remained Earth's most respected defenders. Today's meeting was with representatives from 3 different alien species: the crystalline Eryx, the gaseous Melorans, and the plant-like Voth. Each had requested diplomatic relations with Earth after hearing how the mighty Rin had been defeated. "Your world's reputation is quite fascinating," said the Eryx diplomat, their crystalline form shimmering in the sunlight. "To defeat the Rin Collective using simple insects, it has become legendary among spacefaring species." Ta-Sik smiled politely. The beehive displayed in a transparent case behind him was not just for show. It contained actual descendants of the bees that had fought in the war. Their gentle humming provided a constant reminder of how Earth had survived its first interstellar conflict. "We prefer peaceful relations," he told them, gesturing to the symbolic hive. But we protect our own. Earth's strength lies not in advanced technology or powerful weapons, but in our connection to our world's natural systems. The Melloran representative, a swirling cloud of colored gases contained within a transparent sphere, moved closer to examine the beehive. Our records show the Rin had conquered 12 worlds before encountering Earth. None of those worlds successfully resisted. How did you know the bees would be effective? We didn't, Tosic admitted. We discovered it by chance, and then we adapted. That's another of humanity's strengths. We learn, we improvise, we survive. The gardens outside were a testament to this philosophy. Among the beautiful flowers and plants, special breeding facilities were hidden underground, maintaining populations of both regular and space-adapted bees. Earth would never be caught unprepared again. The Voth representative, a towering plant-like being, rustled their leaf-like appendages. Our scientists are particularly interested in how you modified the insects for space combat. Such adaptation shows remarkable ingenuity. Tosic led them to a window overlooking the gardens. Bees moved from flower to flower, going about their ancient work of pollination. These simple insects had saved humanity, and now they served as both a warning and a promise to other civilizations. Earth is open for peaceful trade and cultural exchange, he explained. We have much to learn from other worlds, and much to share, but we maintain our defensive capabilities. On his desk, a small plaque caught the sunlight. It read, "In honor of Earth's smallest defenders." Similar memorials had been erected in cities worldwide, reminding future generations of how close humanity had come to extinction and what had saved them. The meeting continued with discussions of trade agreements and cultural exchanges. The three alien species were particularly interested in Earth's agricultural methods, the very knowledge that had helped humans understand and utilize bees so effectively. As the diplomats prepared to leave, the Eric's representative made one final observation. Your world is unique in our experience. Most species rely on technology for defense. You turn to nature instead. Perhaps that is why you succeeded where others failed. Tosic watched them depart, then walked into the gardens. The air was filled with the sound of buzzing as bees went about their work. Some were regular honeybees, while others were the enhanced versions developed during the war. All of them were essential to Earth's future. In the years since the invasion, humanity had advanced tremendously. They had learned to use the Rin's teleportation technology, begun exploring nearby star systems, and established contact with numerous alien civilizations. Yet they had never forgotten what had saved them. Every human child now learned beekeeping in school. Every new building included special areas for bee colonies. The insects had become more than just pollinators or honey producers. They were a symbol of humanity's resilience and ingenuity. Tosic stopped by a flower bed where several bees were gathering pollen. These tiny creatures, unchanged in their essential nature for millions of years, had proven more powerful than the most advanced alien technology. It was a lesson humanity would never forget. As the sun set over the Interstellar Relations Center, Tosic made his final notes for the day. Earth's position in the galaxy was secure, not through force or fear, but through the reputation earned by its smallest defenders. The bees continued their endless work, unaware that they had not just saved humanity, but had helped forge its path to the stars. In gardens and apiaries across the planet, billions of bees went about their ancient tasks, while in space stations and colonies, their modified cousins stood ready to defend humanity once again. Earth had found its place among the stars, and it had done so not by conquering or dominating, but by understanding and working with the natural world that had been its home for so long.